Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Please call me Peeping Tim.
Oh, look at the eyebrows going, everyone. So yeah, that's a Screams After Midnight. It's a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched the movie, we talk about it. It's really that simple. This episode is actually the result of a Patreon vote. Every month at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, our $5 and up patrons get to vote on a film, usually classic stuff, because we have a new vote as well at $10 tier for some new VOD stuff. But Peeping Tom was the winner of the vote in this case. I think it was was it all British movies, or was it all something else? Yeah, okay. So that was the theme. Peeping Tom was the winner. Peeping Tom,
it was the British movies, wasn't it?
I mean, you do a better English accent than I can, honestly.
You watch the movies, you get yourself a little bit of fish and chip.
Fish and shit? What was that? So, Peeping Tom is often saddled with being kind of maybe the first slasher movie. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but in the same way that it kind of is a stepping stone to get to them, it actually predates Psycho. It actually just beat Psycho to the punch. It came out in 1960.
A few months, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting they both came out, but obviously this came out on the other side of the planet. So very interesting. Michael Powell ended up being blacklisted essentially after making this, the director. So, very raunchy for its time, very risque for its time, and we'll get into maybe what some of those elements are, and we'll talk about it. The basic gist of it, and I will mention, of course, that we will start spoiler free. We'll give you warning before we go into spoilers. But the basic gist of the premise is that we have our main character, by the name of Mark, who is a killer. He's a serial killer. But he also films. He's actually basically makes snuff films. He films all of his murders with this old, film camera. Again, this is one of the weird things about watching this now is that obviously all the technology is very primitive, but it's kind of funny how he's essentially doing like snuff films. He's making home movies. At one point, he even films a reaction of someone. Which, when I was watching with on stream with chat, someone cracked the joke that he was filming the first ever reaction video for YouTube. Which is, is kind of a thing. So, but he's killing people, but he kind of befriends this young woman who's his neighbor, and like a sort of real romance kind of starts to blossom, and kind of maybe makes
just like the Joker.
That's a good reference. Solid. But he makes he starts to kind of fall in love for real, which maybe starts to contrast his like otherwise very unhealthy views towards women and sexuality and all those things. So that's Peeping Tom in a nutshell. So we're going to dive into it and see how we feel. So had you seen this before, Tim? Was this the first time watch?
Yeah, it's first time.
First time for you. I had seen this once before, but it was a long time ago, so I'd remembered some of the key sequences, but the actual plot and how it progressed I'd really forgotten. So all right, so how did you feel then? What was your opinion, your initial, your thoughts, your instinct, your gut feeling after Peeping Tom?
All right, listen, it's fine. All right, I know there's a lot of people that are gonna say like, oh my god, this movie is so old, it's a masterpiece. Like, how do they even like, how do they even make a movie this old? I can't believe it. Like, listen, it's just because something's old doesn't mean it's automatically good. All right.
Like your president.
Exactly. Listen, I do have hope in this country that someday we'll be able to elect a white man who's under 80, but I don't know if it'll happen. I don't need people adding us in the comments. I know the president's not actually 80, but you know what I mean. They're super old, shitty people.
Yeah, that was a satirical comment for everyone who wasn't quite following.
Yes. But what I'm saying though is like I feel like this is probably a movie that like a lot of people like sometimes there's older movies like this that people just like, oh my god, this is brilliant, it's a masterpiece. I do think I'm not trying to say like it doesn't deserve some praise, because I think there is a lot of interesting stuff in it, but I also didn't think it was like the greatest movie of all time or anything. I think there's certainly like a lot of stuff that's very dated, and stuff that was a little slow for me. So I'm not gonna say it was bad or anything by any stretch of the imagination. I do think there's a lot of stuff that's worth checking out. That's interesting about it, but also like I didn't finish this and like take off my shirt and run around the room saying like, yeah, cinema, woo, like this is great.
Wait, have you done that for any other movie?
Well, The Boy, obviously.
You saw that in theaters, though.
Yeah, that's why I haven't been to the theater since. Or that specific theater.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's some takes there from Tim. Yes, he's here to be the controversial one, of course. I mean, I actually kind of agree that some of it is a little dated. There's definitely elements of it that feel a bit stilted, particularly the dialogue and the way the characters kind of react to certain things. That said, though, I do think it is very well directed. I feel like the direction is very on point. I think the lead actor does a really good job of feeling kind of off kilter, like all the times. He feels very uncomfortable. It definitely feels like a sort of a precursor to a lot of other things. Like I can see how this maybe inspires something like American Psycho or something like you said Joker, I suppose. I mean, I guess maybe in a way. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if Martin Scorsese, who directed Taxi Driver, was a fan of this. Like this, feels like right up his kind of alley. Maybe he's talked about it before, but it feels like it is kind of, it's one of these things where, I started this by saying it's kind of seen as this precursor, and some people consider it the first slasher movie, and I don't really think it's a slasher movie. I said American Psycho there. I think it's got a lot more in common with something American Psycho, which I wouldn't call a slasher movie. He does kill people in that, much like in Peeping Tom, he's killing people. I don't think it's a slasher movie though, and I think Psycho's a bit closer, but even Psycho, I wouldn't necessarily call a slasher movie. I don't think a slasher movie really exists until Texas Chainsaw is, again, another step closer, but it's really Halloween, I think, that really creates what we think of as the slasher movie, right?
Black Christmas, actually.
Black Christmas is, Black Christmas is got an argument.
I agree. Like, I think Halloween is basically where it begins, but I people always like to jump in and say no, Black Christmas, which I feel like there's lots of stuff that you can say have the ingredients of it, but Halloween feels like when it's like fully formed.
I'll put it this way: Halloween is the birth of the slasher movie. This is the guy in the bar looking at the girl and getting an erection before the right, and then Texas Chainsaw is the ejaculation that's going to lead to the slasher movie. Psycho's the foreplay.
Okay. That's one way to put it.
This is the start of this is the not quite the conception yet. I think Texas Chainsaw is the conception, but this is the build up to the conception here. It's not just one fell swoop. It's not like we just didn't have anything like it and then slasher movies happened. This is kind of the first step towards them. Because it is, it's a contemporary film. Obviously, it feels very old school now to us because it's 1960. But it's at the time it was a present day set in the real world movie about a seedy, psychologically impaired person who was murdering women. And it's a very sexual film as well, which again, all of these things really stuck out to me as I was watching it again, because if you go back and watch a Hollywood movie... I don't think it was
the only thing sticking out to you.
Shut up. But if you go back and watch, and again, Psycho's kind of the exception here, but if you watch a movie from Hollywood from 1960, do you think you're seeing some of the subjects that have been brought up in this? Hell, in the first 10 minutes there's a masturbation joke. How many movies from Hollywood were cracking masturbation jokes in 1960?
Yeah. I mean, there was the first American Pie, the one from 1964. But other than that, though.
Yes, very good.
Actually, no, there is a I know you don't really like sketch comedy, or at least not as much as I do, but there's a really funny.
Depends on the sketch, to be honest, but sure.
There's this sketch comedy group called the Birthday Boys. They had a show on IFC for a while, and then they had this really funny sketch that I think about sometimes, where it's it was the first teen comedy, but it was a movie from the like 40s or 50s, so it's like a, like guy, like like they're treating it like American Pie, but it's all stuff like, I'm gonna go on a walk with a woman. They're like, a walk? Like, you madman. And stuff. And they're like, you went on a walk with my mother? It's like, but that's a very funny sketch, though. People should check it out. All right, so I guess we're on to ratings then. I would.
I'm getting the impression Tim's not enthused about this one and doesn't want to talk about it that much.
Well, we just have a lot to do today, so I'm speeding it along.
We do have a few episodes to record today, but I'm not going to shortchange Peeping Tom. I've got some things to talk about, such as the highly. I promised people on stream that I was going to go on a 20-minute rant about the pronunciation of the word Mimo.
Okay.
Do you remember this scene? Do you know what I'm even saying when I say Mimo?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I had the same thoughts.
Yes.
I took off my shirt, ran around the room.
Is there anything you don't take your shirt off for and run around the room, Tim?
Just showering.
Sure.
A little self-conscious.
Okay, just checking. So no, as I say, because the movie, the main character Michael, I mean, obviously he's filming these snuff films and whatnot, but he actually works at a movie studio. He's a focus puller, and there's a lot of scenes that around the film that's been worked on that he's there on set for, and it cuts to like the movie producers and like the guy from the studio talking about they have to keep making the movie, they have to keep going, and he keeps talking about how he got a memo. But every time he says memo, he says Mimo. He says it like 3 times. And I'm like, why is he saying memo wrong? Who says Mimo? This is like people who say beta instead of beta. You're wrong.
Yeah, that didn't stick out to me. I might have just been maybe either a little zoned out or just assumed that was a British pronunciation.
How dare you? How dare you? I mean, admittedly, it's all English people, so I shouldn't be that mad. And they've got very specific accents as well. I mean, actually, Michael's got a bit more of a European accent, but
yeah, like to be honest, it doesn't like it doesn't like seem very British. I feel like I don't know, like maybe I was just
I don't know,
like sucked into it, but
the prostitute in the opening scene. Because the opening scene is a POV scene, which is notable because Halloween starts with a POV scene. Now, admittedly, this it's actually through the point of his camera, so it's actually almost like found footage-esque. Like this, arguably, this may be the first found footage scene in the history of cinema. I don't know if it is. It may not be, but
I actually did like all that stuff, like the way they were using the camera. That like was stuff I think is really cool and felt very ahead of its time.
Yeah, very ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Well, because I was joking actually, because when Helen's like, she's like really excited because he has a camera and he has like home movies, because she's asking at one point to see his films, and they're not like made films, they're just like random things that he shot, but she's really impressed. And it occurred to me though that no, this would be impressive in 1960. The idea that someone can just film stuff would actually be insanely impressive, because not everyone can do that at the time. Like, not many people have film cameras because you could only do it with film cameras. Like there was no, I mean, never mind phones, there was no camcorders, there was no,
it'd be like telling someone you had a podcast in 2008.
yeah we missed the boat, Tim. We could have been there first. We could have been instrumental to the development of the podcast scene. But no, what I was going to say about the opening scene though is the prostitute that he goes up to says it'll be £2, which blew my mind. First of all, for those of you who don't know, I'll translate quid here. Quid is just the slang for pounds, kind of like how bucks is for dollars. So it's just like saying $2. So £2 is just £2. It's not an old currency, just in case anyone gets confused. It's still used today, that word. But £2 for a prostitute? Inflation has done a number on the economy, my friend. £2? It's a bargain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good price.
Have you had a prostitute recently? Because £2 ain't going to get you shit.
Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe we'll add a £2 tier to the Patreon.
No, inflation's went up a bit. Can't give them much for £2. Thank you very much. So No, but no, I do think it's genuinely well directed and really tense in points. Mostly through the performance, the lead in the direction and the camera work. But it does use the camera in inventive ways. I do kind of agree that it is slow in places. Some of the lines of dialogue from the other characters do come across a bit kind of weird. Like the love interest Helen, I thought was very kind of very like forward and kind of almost annoying in places with just how like abrasively kind of like polite and nice she was being. I know that sounds weird, but it was like very over the top.
Yeah. It's I think the stuff that's really I mean, I guess it makes sense because he's the main character or whatever, but it's everything that's going on with Michael. Like all his stuff is all very interesting and intriguing, and it is very weird and voyeuristic and unstable, intense. So that stuff is all great. It's just usually when we're dealing like with other stuff that kind of slows down, and so it's like when he's talking to the love interest or the mother or the people at the studio, like sometimes it's still interesting, but that's usually like kind of puts like a big like grinding halt to me when we kind of get to that stuff.
I like the movie studio stuff for the most part though, because they played with it a little bit. We'll get to it in spoilers what they do on the movie studio set, but the director of the movie they're making, it was actually made me laugh out loud twice. He's got a couple of really good lines because he's getting frustrated that the actors aren't doing what he's saying, and there's a really funny line he has at one point. So I'll save it for spoilers though, because it is spoiler territory. But there's other things I like there. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, it is notable there is a severe lack of blood in the kill scenes, which is funny because this movie, of course, as I said, blacklisted director, basically ended his career, and the scenes like have almost no blood in them. Like you have to really like squint and look for blood to find any.
I think that's like kind of my big problem with it, especially when like I think another thing that maybe might have like hurt it a little bit for me, that if I go back and watch it again, maybe I'll have a different opinion. But when you keep hearing all this stuff like about it, being compared to Psycho and being this prototype slasher, I am expecting like like more kills, and obviously I know it's from a long time ago, so I'm not like expecting like huge gore or anything, but I am expecting it to be a little more vicious, when it is just like it is extremely like tame by today's standards. Like again, like I know I'm sure it was shocking back in the day, but like Psycho though, I think that's like one of the reasons why it still holds up is because it still feels like very visceral, even though you're not seeing like gore or anything in that, but there is like a brutality in there that I feel like we're not really getting here.
Hey, I'm not going to argue that Psycho's the better movie, because it is. Like that's not like Psycho's a masterpiece that stands up to this day. Peeping Tom has some aging elements, but I do think there's a lot in there to still kind of appreciate and a lot to sort of see. And and the sexuality, the attitude towards sex, talking about pornography and stuff like that in here. Like this feels like sometimes when you watch films from certain eras, you can feel when something is doing something really risky for the time, even if it's not really that risky by today's standards. But just the idea of seeing women in scantily clad, and I think at one point you even see some breasts, and it's like at the time this would have stuck out as being very like taboo kind of thing. So and there is some moments of comedy in there as well. So I do think it's worth seeing. I think if you're a fan of horror movies and you want to like explore horror history and see all the stepping stones, I think this is one that's worth seeing, and I think there's enough in there to get out of it. I would say it's a good movie. It has some dated elements, but I think overall it is a good movie.
I say skip it. Just go right ahead to Friday the 13th Part 6. You'll be good.
Philistine. All right, let's get to spoilers then. So spoilers.
And if people do want to watch it, it is on Prime for free. That's how I watched it.
True. Yes, in the US it's on Prime. And if you're not in the US, then I recommend a nice VPN. It's very helpful for things like that.
Or you can just move here.
That sounds way more expensive. Also, I'm pretty sure the immigration process right now, Tim's maybe a little halted.
Perhaps.
Even though they should be begging people from the outside to come in with their healthy blood.
Yes, we need more blood.
Freaking vampire, we do. So yes, I'll take this time though to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palisades, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They're our Patreon producers at the moment, at the time of recording. So thank you to all of those people. That means that they are $20 or more patrons on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But you can, of course, support us for as little as $1 per month. And for that $1, you will get a bonus, extra, exclusive episode of Streams After Midnight every single month during the Octoberthon, which is right around the corner. We're right, on the precipice of the Octoberthon. You actually get 4 bonus movies that month. So that's just for the $1. You get access to the back catalogue, of course, of all the bonus movies that we've done so far. And then at the $5 tier, you get voting rights for a movie just like Peeping Tom one. And you get early access to the episodes by a day as well. And then some other stuff at the higher tiers. So go and have a look at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and see if you're interested in helping keep all the content coming and supporting everything we do. Thank you very much. So, I'm going to take a drink of my beverage because my voice is going, having said all that very quickly. But we're about to go into full spoilers. Tim, amuse them with that joke,
Oh, what do you get a Peeping Tom for Christmas?
I don't know.
Clear clear drapes. I don't know.
I actually thought you had a joke ready there. You sounded so confident, and then after I said, I don't know what, you just like, searching for punchline, searching the memory data banks for punchline.
Hey, I think clear drapes is pretty funny.
He does spend a lot of time at a window in this, actually, just looking through the window. Yes. There's like a party going on downstairs at the apartment underneath him, and he just sort of like stares at the window, and they can all see him just leering.
Hey, I've been there.
On which side of the window?
That I'm not willing to divulge.
Okay.
At this time.
So yeah, the opening, as we said, is a POV sort of sequence where he goes up to a prostitute, follows her up to a hotel room or whatever it is, and kills her. But the kills typically end with like them screaming as the camera comes towards them. And it sort of like cuts to black or fades to black. There's not a lot of blood kind of thing. It's more about the build up to the kill than it is the actual sort of blood and gore of it itself.
And I guess what we find out at the end is that he has like a knife on basically like mounted on the camera.
On the tripod, yeah. Well, that's something I was actually talking about, is that most tripods, or at least the ones that I've worked with, is that you have like spreaders on the bottom, but if you're going to like put the tripod onto like a track or a dolly or something else, you take the spreaders off, and typically most tripods do have like spikes at the bottom. This wasn't a spike though, this was literally like a blade that was like built into it. So but yeah, the bottom of the tripod,
it was a custom job.
Yeah. He's built this.
He penguined it.
Well, what we don't find out till the end though, that he's actually got like a mirror on it, so that the victim can see themselves being killed as he's killing them, which is actually pretty dark. But so we get this opening kill scene, and it's solid. We get to learn about who he is afterwards, where he goes to this like convenience store, where there's actually a really funny scene here that sets up that this guy who runs the store actually sells like porn on the side. And keep in mind, this is 1960. This is in the dark ages where you had to actually go and get porn from a store. And this guy comes in asking for 2 newspapers, and he's like, "Oh, I understand you also sell." I think he calls them views.
Sound like that. Yeah.
And he pulls out like a portfolio of photographs. He's like, "How much for all of them?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, whatever." And it's like, okay, but what I loved about it is that the guy walks out with his envelope with the photographs without his newspapers, and the news agent's like, "Hey, your papers, sir." And he's like, "Oh yes, of course." And I'm like, I wonder what he actually came in here for, and what was just the the charade of, "Oh, I'm here for my newspapers like a normal person. I'm not, I'm not here for anything seedy." So, but it introduces this idea that our main character Mark shoots these photographs as a side job on top of his regular thing. So we see him interacting with the girls upstairs, and they actually, they're very scantily clad, and it feels very risque for the time. He has kind of a weird scene here where he gets he's almost not interested in the actual sort of the main girl that he's photographing, photographing. He's actually more interested. There's another girl there who's there for the first time. She's got like a sort of a disfigurement on her face, and he's very kind of like clearly interested and excited by this. He's like, no, I want to photograph it, because she's like, oh, you don't have to shoot my face, just the body. And no, I want to. This is fascinating, and he's all excited. He's like, I'll be honest, I thought he was going to jizz in his pants. He looked very. He was looking very excited by this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We see about his actual job, and he's a focus puller and all the rest of it. From there, I think we'll mention the other we'll mention the other kill that he does, because there's only actually 2 kills before the end of the movie, until he kills himself. I mean, we're in spoilers. I did make that clear. Because he kills a woman that works in the movie set, the stand-in for the lead actress, who stays after work one day, and it was never really clear why what they were going to shoot. Like, he was going to shoot something with her in it, but he's actually just building up to killing her, and she's dancing around for ages, and then he eventually kills her. And this is where we actually get the idea that he's got the blade at the end of the tripod leg, and he's sort of like coming in slowly, and she screams and all the rest of it. The things that the directors did that really made me laugh was, earlier on in the movie, they're shooting a scene with the lead actress who's supposed to faint, and they do like 50 takes, and even this was kind of funny because it cut to this straight after the executive was like, you know what, we're trying to save money. If the first take is visible and audible, it's good enough. Move on. And then it cuts to this scene where the director's doing like 50 takes because he's not happy with the faint. He's like, take 49, and she keeps trying to faint, and it's not very good. One of the things that it sets up with Mark is that he likes to not only film the kills, but also anything else that comes after. So the kill at the start with the prostitute, he actually films when he's walking past. He films like the paramedics like taking the body from the building with the sheet over it. He films the police investigating from a distance. He sets up the body of the second victim in the movie studio, and like there's like trunks, because the set's like a department store, and there's all these trunks, and he puts the body in a trunk. And he basically does this so that he can then film the reaction of the body being found. So the actress who's in the scene is going to like open this trunk, and he gets his camera ready, and he's got it all ready, and she opens the trunk, and no one else sees it. It's just the actress and maybe the actor who's standing next to her. She screams and faints, and Mark's, as I was gonna say Michael because that's the director's name. Mark's filming this, and he's like he's really intense and into it. He's like watching her. He's like, oh, right. She faints. The director then yells out, "The silly bitch! She fainted in the wrong scene." Come on, that line was gold.
I forgot about that, but I did laugh when he said that. I did not. I did not see that coming. Like this old guy screaming "silly bitch" at his actress.
And the line that made me laugh later is that she's back on set shooting another scene while the police are there investigating things, and she's like obviously like really upset, and she's trying to do the scene. She's talking about like whatever she's looking at, and it's red, and she starts like crying because it's reminded her of the blood. And it just cuts to the director after she walks off the scene because she has to be like escorted out because she's too emotional, and he just sort of goes, "Gee God," or something like that. I can't remember the exact line, but there was just another moment with it that made me laugh. And there's like a therapist on set who's saying no, she needs like days to like recuperate from this. She can't just be back to work the next day. This takes counselling and trauma management and all that. That cracked me up. I don't know. But so I think the two key things we have to talk about though, other than kind of the awkwardness of the actor and like how he is in some of the scenes, is the main love interest story and his backstory, which is very intricate.
Yeah, the backstory I think was actually maybe some of my favorite stuff. Like I don't know, I thought that was like really interesting whenever he talked about his dad and like these weird like psychological experiments he did. And I like just like stuff like the like throwing the lizard on the bed, like something about it just seemed like so kind of weird and off, and like even the like a lizard like seemed like kind of awkward, like it's just kind of on the bed and it's like kind of moving, kind of like frantic, not sure where to go, and it seems like such an odd choice.
Yeah, to explain this, he shows Helen, the love interest, some footage, and it's like, oh, who's this little boy? And he's like, oh, it's me. And it turns out that his dad was obsessed with like documenting his entire childhood. So he always had a camera on him. He always had like audio like mics in his bedroom and stuff like that. And he would do things to get a reaction. So he would like wake him up with a light in the middle of the night, or as you said, by throwing a lizard on the bed, and basically tormenting him just to see his various reactions. So we see that he gets it from his father, but he also has this really weird attitude towards women and sex, because his father, or his mother rather, died when he was quite young, and his father just like remarried someone within like, well, like it was like 3 months or something like that. It was like really quick, and like he would like watch people kissing in the park, and that's made me laugh actually, because Helen like sees this bit of footage where his dad's filming him as a little boy watching a couple like making out in the park, and Helen's like, "Oh, you naughty boy, I hope you were spanked," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very seriously, because obviously if someone says "you naughty boy" now to an adult, it you know, it's kinky, right? It's like, "You naughty boy," and in 1960 she's saying it deadpan, like completely serious. But it sets up that he does have this very like absurd attitude towards the opposite sex and towards any sort of sexual sort of encounter, to the point where when, you know, him and Helen are in close, intense, sort of intimate moments, he gets very awkward. He tries to back away. You know, because basically he's coming home one night after a weird, creepy, like staring in the window scene. It's her 21st birthday party, and she comes out. Her mother's blind as well, who she takes care of. And she comes out to talk to him and tries to like start up a conversation, comes up to speak to him in his place. And she's very insistent, you know, she's like trying to talk about what, you know, who he is, what his job is, and this is what eventually leads to him showing her some of his films and this very intense backstory. And she gets very scared at various points in these films. She's like, "Oh, what's happening? Why is it happening like this? Make it stop, Mark, make it stop," you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, every time he comes in the door, she's like listening for him. She runs out and talks to him, and she's like, "Oh, hi, Mark," and you know, things of that nature. So,
oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, come on. Of course, we're going to do a room joke at some point.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. Would we be nerds on the internet if we didn't? Come on.
Sure. Yeah, no, that stuff is all like real interesting, and like it's, you know, and it, you know, it's funny, you know, for something at the time, to actually have kind of like, you know, an interesting, deep, like psychological backstory. Like, oh, okay, this like makes sense why he is, you know, the way he is. I did find that stuff kind of fascinating.
And the camera's kind of his penis. Like that's like he very much like caresses it. At one point, he agrees to go out for dinner with Helen, and he's going to bring his camera, and she's like, "Oh, I mean, I've never seen you without that thing. I mean, do you need it tonight?" And he's like, "Oh no, I suppose I don't." And she has to kind of almost, like in a nice way, but she almost has to like sort of fight it off of him so that he'll leave it behind. And they go out, they have a relatively nice dinner, although there is a weird moment where he spots a couple kissing in the park, and he kind of stares at it a little bit in front of Helen. And she kind of like doesn't even get fazed by this, which is weird. It's almost like she recognizes he's got issues, but she wants to like help him and take care of him. She wants to like be there to caress this sweet innocent soul and, you know, make a man out of him, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I'm curious, like what counted as like a red flag back in that day? Because like watching it now, there's a lot of stuff that's like, well, no, that's not good. But
yeah, you do wonder, because this is the thing. Like, obviously, all sorts of abuse, everything that exists today, pretty much existed forever. It's just a case of like how much more well informed everyone is, and you know, noticing what these red flags are. Because even early on, when he's photographing the girl, who even had a funny line actually, I think it was Millie was her name. I tell a lie. There was 3 murders, not 2, because she gets killed near the end. But she has this line where she's like, because she has a couple of bruises, and she's like, "Oh, I was out this past weekend with my boyfriend. I'm getting married in a few months, but that was the problem. My fiance saw us." And I was like, "Oh, that was a kind of amusing line, you know."
Yeah. Very saucy.
Very saucy. But where was I going with this? Yeah. Anyway, so he's out for this dinner, and there's a scene when they come back where Helen kisses him, not super passionately, it's just a kiss on the lips, you know, but it's not like they're you know, tonguing each other or anything like that. But what's weird about it is that this is after, you know, he's got his camera back and he's up in his apartment. And she leaves, and he immediately like puts the camera up against his lips and kind of, you know, sort of rubs his mouth against the camera. And it's hard not to notice, one, it's weird that he has to do this after he's kissed someone, and two, how phallic it looks, because it's one of these old cameras that's got kind of the long lens kind of sticking out, so it's got a very, you know, cylinder kind of shape, so it's impossible not to notice the phallic nature of him with this up against his mouth. It just so very intriguing sort of exploration of who he is. And you know, his Helen's mother, who's blind, like kind of is suspicious of him. It's like basically she can hear the difference in the way that he walks. He's very stealthy. He's very different to the point where she can even sense when he's at the window, when you know, he's made no noise, and he comes to speak to her and basically says that, you know, he makes her uneasy. He almost kills her actually, because he's got the blade up against her neck, but she can't see it. She can't even see the film. She can't see any of this, you know, creepy shit. But she can sense it. She can sense that there's something wrong with them. And he promises not to see Helen because of it, because she threatens to move away with her daughter. And so, you know, there's this idea, and it kind of bubbles up as well at the investigation, because the police come to talk to people at the movie studio, and they have them followed because they're following multiple people, admittedly, to see, like, you know, who's going where and what their pastimes are. But he actually has this scene where he goes to this therapist who's on set, who's there presumably to help anyone who's, you know, grieving because they found a dead body, and he actually tries to, like, essentially ask kind of slyly, like, about how to cure his condition. It's like he actually wants to become better for Helen. He wants to stop having the urge to murder people so that he can actually be with Helen, because, you know, he doesn't want to film her, because if he films her, he's going to want to kill her. That's kind of the thing. So, because he promises the mum that he'll never film her, he'll never film Helen, and basically the guy's like, oh yeah, you can cure that condition, you know, more or less. It just takes 30 years, you know, two or three sessions a week for 30 years. That'll knock it right out. And he's like, oh, okay, 30 years. So he intentionally wants to get caught. You know, he knows he's being followed by a policeman, and he goes into the you know, the news agents up to the photography studio to photograph Millie. And he intentionally kills someone there when he knows their body's going to be found, and that he's going to be the one who's known to be there. Like, they're going to know it's him. And sure enough, they come racing to his place once they find the body. But this is all like a sort of nick of the time thing, because he's in his apartment with Helen, who's actually started watching some of the films when he wasn't there. She sort of went in and she sort of been sneaky, and she's like, you know, I'm going to watch some of these when he's not here. And you don't even see what she's seeing. We just see her reactions, looking horrified. She's like, oh, no! What are you doing, Mark?
Yeah.
No! And we get this, honestly, the best kill of the movie is probably suicide.
Yeah.
You know, it's the most dramatic, I think.
Most dramatic, sure. It's, I mean, again, I hate to say it, because I know, you know, obviously you can't do like a big gory thing at the time, but it does look kind of cheesy. Like, I don't know, kind of looks like he's just holding it against his neck, you know, by himself.
No, yeah,
but, like,
it doesn't have any sort of trick to make it look it's actually impaling him. So you can, it's kind of like how when you watch like an old movie with gunshots, and like there's no squibs or blood, or you know, it just looks like they're pretending.
Just like people going like, ah, and like falling over.
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe. There is a little bit of blood in the blade in the following shots, but essentially what he does is that, you know, she feels kind of scared. She's not running away though, but he basically says, okay, the police are on their way, and he sets up his tripod, and his camera's running along with the mirror so he can see himself do it. So he's going to kill himself the way he's been killing other people. So he actually stands with his neck against the blade, and she tries to stop him, but he, of course, does it. You know, that's just kind of your big ending.
So I mean, I you know, I hate to call it cheesy or anything like it, but because when you are watching it, you do get caught up in like you said, it is like a very dramatic scene. So. It does have that going for it. It's just the actual execution looks a little cheesy by today's standards, but I mean, I did feel like it was like impactful, you know.
You know, and there's the scenes where he secretly films a policeman investigating things, like when they're on set and stuff like that. And he keeps saying that he's making a documentary, and And it's almost like this is his ending. Like this, someone could edit all of his footage together and make like a documentary out of it. A couple of interviews spliced in. You could easily make a documentary out of all of his footage. And it feels like this is his big finale. This is how he's going to go out, because he can't be normal. He tried, and he's like, 30 years, screw that. I'm just going to go out in a blaze of glory right now. But I think one thing we've not really mentioned too much is that how good the directing is, because there's a lot of scenes where there is like tension created by the way it films him, the way it kind of like will track into him when he has an idea, or the way it'll do things through the POV, or it'll cut to the footage on the camera that he's filming from, or it'll cut between them, or there's a lot of really great touches, and it's really subtle the way it's directed for the most part, and it has this sort of tone. And then added to that is the performance of the actor who plays Mark. If I'll get his name here. Karlheinz Böhm. So it sounds like a German name. I don't know if he's actually from Germany or somewhere similar. Yeah, Germany. He's from Darmstadt, Germany.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, no, I think his performance is kind of delightfully off kilter.
He's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So someone said in the stream that this almost was a role that like maybe 10 years later Klaus Kinski could have played.
Oh sure.
And I almost think, I compared it to American Psycho. I think, again, this probably has something more in common to like a Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer than it does a slasher movie.
Yes. Yeah, that's I think the two things that like it kind of reminded me of were like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer and Maniac a bit.
I thought of Maniac
remake.
as well, because both Maniacs, because the whole idea that he's doing this, but then he's sort of got a love interest who's you're maybe thinking might like convince him to stop killing, or maybe this proves he has a heart, or something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously it's very tame compared to Maniacs or Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. But in the context of when it came out, it is quite I'm sure it was really shocking to anyone who saw this in 1960, because films didn't do this kind of thing at that point.
Yeah, like I hate to be maybe a little harsh on it. It's kind of tough because I mean it is modern day, so part of you is gonna look at it through that modern day lens. But at the same time, like, I feel like if I saw this in 1960 or whatever, I probably would have been blown away. Like it's, like there's like definitely a lot of stuff there that very tame by today's standards, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you don't see a lot of other movies of this time period doing this.
Yeah, I think it holds up as a piece of movie history that I think's got a lot of great elements to it. I think the direction's really solid. The performance of the lead, I can't emphasize it enough. I don't even have any specific examples. He just has a way of delivering his lines and the silence between his words that feels not even like super serial killery. It feels more awkward. It feels more like he is someone who, like, it's not like he's constantly intimidating. It's not that type of performance. It's more like he is this awkward guy who gets an urge,
Yeah, and I feel like you don't see that a lot around this time, because I feel like when I watch movies from this time period, it always seems like everyone's kind of overacting. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like everyone has these kind of like, and it probably has to do with like the technology and how stuff was made back then. But everyone always kind of has like these big booming voices, and they always kind of talk real fast, and like, or they're like, like, what are you doing? Like this, like these big over the top kind of villainous voices. So I think it's like pretty cool that you have someone here who is very understated and awkward and quieter than like I don't know, like a mad scientist or something you would see around this time that would just kind of be yelling or whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah. Also, apparently after 1981, the actor was focused on charitable work. So seems like he was maybe a nice dude in real life.
That's great.
But
one thing I kept thinking of is like, since there is a lot of aspects of this that do kind of feel ahead of its time, like, do you think that a remake of this would do well? Like, I mean, obviously, it'd be dependent on a lot on who they get to do it, but I don't know. I kept thinking, like, this is one thing I think, I don't know, could be kind of cool. I don't know if that's like sacrilegious to say.
I mean, you could definitely do an update on it. I think you'd have to have a lot of style. I think the worry I'd have is because I think the direction here's a lot of style. It feels, I mean, it's of its time, but it has a really strong directorial hand. I think if you did this again, you would definitely need a director who's going to make it feel unique. And
Yeah.
I'd be worried that it would just feel like a, ho hum kind of thing.
Yeah, it would have to be like someone that actually, it is like a passion project for them and not just a generic Hollywood like,
yeah,
hey, we have the license to this movie, let's update it or whatever. But I don't know, like I did. Obviously, you can kind of say it about anything. Like, whoa, if they get a good director and writer, it'll be cool. But like, I don't know. I do feel like, in the right hands, this could be potentially pretty cool.
Yeah. It's the sort of thing that maybe you could try it now through only using his footage. Like maybe you actually make it into like a full found footage movie almost.
Yeah, totally.
Could be an interesting tactic, which I guess is not far away from what the Maniac remake did with making it all POV.
Yeah.
But putting a film making spin on it as opposed to just normal remakey things, I suppose. But yeah,
totally.
And we still have to do the Maniac movies, which we haven't got around to yet. But we will. God damn it.
Yeah. No, I mean I love that remake. I still haven't seen the original. I think I maybe seen parts of it, but yeah, I actually need to go.
Honestly, they're both worth watching. I do really. It is something we'll do at some point. I don't know if we've got any slots left for the rest of this year, but we'll find a reason to do them maybe next year. So, but yeah, that's pretty much Peeping Tom. I think it's I think it's got a lot more to offer than maybe. I think you start the movie off. It's kind of interesting with the POV kind of the film idea that it's got. Parts of it are kind of slow, and maybe you could watch 10 minutes of it and feel it's a bit old, but I do think there's a surprising amount of great tension from the camera work and the performance of the lead actor. I also think that it's surprisingly funny in places, so it's actually got more going for it than just what it's known for. And then, you put it in the context of the time that it came out in, and I think it's a kind of a fascinating watch because of that, because it's pushing all these things forward. And while like Psycho is more visceral, there is definitely some elements of this that are pushing other things a bit further than Psycho did.
That's true. Yeah.
The sexuality stuff arguably is maybe a touch further in some ways, but because I mentioned the masturbation joke at the start. The joke in question is when the guy who buys the photographs with the newspapers walks out. After he walks out the store, the guy who sold them, the clerk, says he won't be doing the crossword tonight.
Yeah,
he just straight up said the guy's going to have a wank. Like movies from this time period don't really do that. It's unique. So no, it's just really going, and the idea of the movie, the lead character being voyeuristic, and then we feel voyeuristic because we're seeing women dressed like this, which again is tame for now, but at the time would have felt like, hey, this is a leap forward. And everything about this movie is the obsession of watching people and watching their reactions and seeing how they are in different situations, when it should be a private moment for someone that when they react to certain things. But this obsession with capturing everything, and it does that kind of as this kind of like a forebearer to the obsession with everyone filming everything for YouTube these days, or TikTok, or Twitter, or Instagram, or whatever people film things for these days. There's probably like a through line you could follow from like this all the way through cinema till like what we are like nowadays with like reality TV and there's probably a through line.
There's something there.
So, but that is a thesis for someone who has a lot of time, time that we do not have. So Tim, what would you rate Peeping Tom out of 10?
I don't know. I feel like people are probably gonna get mad at me because they'll think this is too low, but I'm gonna give it a 6. I think it's. I mean, I don't know. Like I thought it was good. Like I'm glad I watched it. But I mean, again, like there was just some stuff that was a bit dated, a bit slow for me. And again, maybe part of it was the reputation that I had in my head. Everyone's saying like, oh yeah, no, it's like like a masterpiece and the first slasher ever, and oh my god. And there's again definitely ingredients of stuff that will kind of lend its way towards horror movie and stuff. But maybe I just had a bigger expectation in my head. Who knows if I go back and watch it. But no, 6 feels right for me at this point in time.
I want to point out that that's 2 points lower than The Boy, and Tim's scale.
Probably 2.5. If I...
And The Boy's an 8.5?
At least.
You said 8 in the review, Tim. It's on record.
Oh, I'm going. I'm bumping it up a smidge.
Oh God. Yeah, I am. I think I appreciate this a little bit more, but maybe I'm a bit more of a snob. I enjoy cinema history a bit more than Tim does.
I like cinema history from 1980 up until.
They can't all be Transformers sequels, Tim. Some films have to actually have a little bit more going for them. No, yes.
Don't make people think I have any love for Transformers. that I will take offense at.
Okay, I've pushed the button. No, I'm going to give it an 8. I think 8 out of 10 is a very fair score. I do think there's elements of it that are a little bit slow and a little bit aged, but I do think it holds up remarkably well for having the performance of the lead and everything else that I've mentioned throughout, and it has a surprising amount going for it, even if there are some things you can point to and say, hey, this is a little bit dated, or that's a little bit slower, or whatever. There's a lot here that still works, and it is overshadowed because Psycho is the better movie, right? If you go back and check my Psycho rating from last Octoberthon, I gave that some bitch a 10 because it is a 10. This is overshadowed for sure, but it is a really strong film, and I do think there's a lot of merit here. It does serve a place in horror history.
Sure.
So there you go. That's Peeping Tom. So if you made it this far in the review, put in the word Mimo into the comments to let us know you got this far. Tim, I'm going to actually do your thumbnail pose. So we're going to say 3, 2, 1 and pose. 3, 2, 1, pose. Did a bit. There you go.
Trying to look like I'm looking through a camera.
You have to do it again. You have to hold up your hands so that you're looking at the lens of the camera, so you can see your eye. Because I can't see your eye right now. Angle your, tilt your hands up a bit, up a bit. There you go. Perfect. I'll just say Peeping Tom. I'll put Peeping Tom in big yellow text and just an arrow pointing to Tim.
I do have the camera. I should have just brought it, but it's in the other room.
You do have a camera? What sort of camera you got?
God, honestly, I don't even know if it works anymore. It's probably from like 2007 or something. I have I used to have like small cameras, me and my friends used to do like sketches, or when I did stand-up comedy more, you kind of just have a little mini tripod to film your set. So yeah, I don't have anything fancy, just like small digital cameras. But
just curious.
Yeah.
Tim's got a collection, just like the character in the film, because we never even mentioned he's got like a whole dark room and he's got like tons of canisters of film and all that stuff. Tim's got a room just like that with a closet full of his dodgier material, shall we say.
Yes.
Yes. Peeping Tim was the correct thing at the start of the review. There you go. That is the review. We mentioned Patreon earlier, of course, so I'll mention that once again. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can, of course, support us for free, though. You can hit the like button on YouTube and comment and subscribe. All these things are super important. Ding the bell for notifications to make sure you get them. You can rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from. Give us 5 stars and a review. That helps us out just in the same way. So please do all that stuff, or some of it, or whatever you feel is appropriate for your love of the show. But you should love the show because we're amazing in every possible way, except Tim's taste in films, obviously. But so guys, on Twitter @StreamsMidnight for channel updates and all that stuff. Look forward to the Octoberthon, which is coming very soon. Lots of extra episodes throughout the month of October for everyone, as well as extra episodes for the patrons. So go and have a look at all that stuff when it hits. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.